Hello everyone, it's nice being with you today. Today we're going to look at the section 2 of your JAM syllabus under the algebra section. And today we'll be looking at a topic, simultaneous equation, one linear, one quadratic. It's nice being with you once more. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, hit the subscribe button so as to receive a regular update of our videos. Now, with this video, you don't need to go reading your notebook or whatever as you prepare for JAM mathematics, because we're going to give you a simplest method ways in which you can understand the various topics that are found in your syllabus. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, hit the subscribe button now before you leave this page so as to get daily notified of our videos once they are published. In our topic today, we'll be looking at simultaneous equation, one linear, one quadratic. Now, at the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve questions that involve simultaneous equations, one linear and one quadratic equation. And in most most UTME exams, questions like this comes once in a while. But the sample lessons we are going to take in this discussion is going to give you serious insights on how to solve this question once you see them in your exams. Now, we are going to analyze this topic one after another. Now, when we say simultaneous equation, what is simultaneous equation? Now, simultaneous equation is an equation that involves two algebraic equations that can be solved at the same time. And this algebraic equation have two variables, x and what? Y. Now, why are they called simultaneous equation? They are called simultaneous equation because they are solved at the same time. Now, each of these equations on its own, they can have infinite possible solution, but then you are given, in simultaneous equation, you'll be given two linear equations which you must solve at the same time. Now, what is the difference between simultaneous equations and simultaneous equations, one linear, one quadratic? Now, simultaneous equations are equations that have two linear equations. This is equation with what? With a value of x and y, with no powers attached to their values of x or y. Now, we are going to also look at simultaneous a good example of simultaneous equations are equations you are seeing on the screen. It can be 3x plus y equal to 12, 5x minus 2 minus y minus 3y equal to 23. That's a simultaneous equation. Or we can have m plus n4 equal to 10 or 2n plus 12n equal to 28. These are both simultaneous equations. And in these two simultaneous equations, you are required to find the value of x and y, or the value of m and what? N. Now the question is, what is simultaneous equation? One linear, one quadratic. Now, when we are given a question on simultaneous equation, one linear, one quadratic, is an equation that involves a linear equation and a quadratic equation. Now, you'll be asked to solve these two equations at the same time, and that is why we call it simultaneous equations, one linear, one quadratic. So one of the equations will be like this one you are seeing, 3x plus y equal to 12. That's the linear equation. And if you notice, the x has no what? Has a power of 1. Now, while quadratic equation is an equation in which the value of x or y can have a power of 2, and the highest power is what? 2. And when you see a power of 3, then you should be talking about polynomials. But this time around, we only talk about quadratic equation. So simultaneous equation, one linear, one quadratic, is only possible. You can solve them possibly using substitution. Now, that is the only easiest method, except if you want to use the graphical method, where the point of intersection between the linear equation and the parabolic equation will now give you, the point of intersection will now give you the values of x and what? And y. But if you want to solve them linear analytically, we use the substitution method of solving simultaneous equation. Now, when solving simultaneous equation with one linear, one quadratic equation, there will usually be two pairs of answers. Now, if you are solving for x first, you are going to get two pairs of the values of x, and then when you substitute them, you're going to get two pairs for the values of y. Or if you are solving for y first, you're going to get two pairs for the values of y, and then when you substitute them, you're going to get two pairs for the values of x. Now, let's take for a good example that we are given a simultaneous linear equation, one linear, one quadratic, in which we have the linear equation to be y equal to x plus y. Now, you are going to substitute this value into the quadratic equation to create an equation that can be factorized and solved quadratically. Now, let's consider the few steps you need to take. The first step is to make one of the variables in the linear equation subject of formula. I know you can solve subject of formula, and if you cannot, I want you to check our video in this series of JAM videos. We have done a full video on the change of subject of formula. Now, once you have changed the subject of formula, you've made one value a subject of formula, you can now substitute that value into the quadratic equation. Now, let's assume we are given this 3x plus y equal to 12 as the linear equation. We can make y the subject of formula. And if you make y the subject of formula, you have your y equal to 12 minus 3x. Now, what we are going to do is to substitute the value of y into the quadratic equation. Now, this is the quadratic equation. Remember the reason why we call it a quadratic equation? Because it has a power of what? The highest power is what? Is 2. And remember, I told you that when it comes to a power of 3, it's no longer a quadratic equation, it becomes a polynomial. Now, if you substitute y equal to 12 minus 3x into this equation, we are going to get this value. Once you substitute it, you simplify. And once you simplify, you are going to end up getting a quadratic equation. So you see, 2x squared minus 12x minus 12 equal to 0 is the quadratic equation. So you see that we say analytically, that's the only way you can solve this question, by substituting a value of x or y into the quadratic equation. Now, the step 2 is you now simplify that quadratic equation by factorization. Remember, there are various ways through which you can solve quadratic equation. You either solve it using the factorization method, or you solve it using the almighty formula, the quadratic formula. Then when you solve this equation quadratically, you can get two values for what? Two values for x. Now, these two values of x in step 3, you are going to substitute these two values of x into any of the two equations. Most especially, it is better choosing the linear equation because they are easy when it comes to substituting. So you could substitute them into the linear equation to get the value of y for that corresponding value of x. Hope you are getting it. Now, the next thing you also do is also to fix the next value of x into that same linear equation to get a corresponding value for what? For y. After doing that, you are done for that. You now have two values for x and two values for what? For y. Now, we are going to consider two good examples. Remember, I told you at the beginning of this video that we are going to take two examples to consolidate your learnings from this topic, simultaneous equation, one linear, one quadratic. So we are going to solve the simultaneous equation x equal to x plus 1 and x squared plus y squared equal to 3. And then question 2, solve 2x plus 3x equal to 5 and 2x squared plus xy equal to 12 simultaneously. Now, do you remember what we told you about simultaneously? We solve them at the same time. So you see, this equation is a linear equation. This other one is a quadratic equation. This is a linear equation, and this is a quadratic equation. And we are required to solve them simultaneously. simultaneously. So we are required to solve them simultaneously. Now, remember the question 1, we are going to consider 6 steps. We are going to substitute x plus y for y into second equation, and then we are going to expand the bracket and simplify. We are now going to factorize a quadratic equation, then work out the values of x, and then find the values of y, substitute both values of x into one of the original equations. And finally, we will now substitute both pairs of values of x and y into both equations to check their results. Now we're going to use this step-by-step solution in solving this question. Now the next thing we also want to do is to check the steps required in solving question 2. Now in that question 2, you'll be required to what? To rearrange. You'll be required to rearrange the first equation. Remember, that's the equation you are going to substitute into the quadratic equation. Then after rearranging, you substitute x 5 minus 3y over 2 for x into second equation. And then you'll notice that it is easier to substitute for x than for what? For y, because y will be very difficult. It will make y subject of formula. The next thing is to expand the brackets and simplify. The next step is to factorize the quadratic equation and work out the values of y, and then work out the values of y. The next is to find the values of x and substitute both values of y into one of the original equation. Now, you now substitute both pairs of values of x and y into both equations. That is to check your what? Your result. These are the steps required in solving these two questions. Now, let's go to our whiteboard to take the solutions of these two sample questions. If you are with me, now let's go right to the whiteboard. So we are going to solve the first question. The first question says solve simultaneously y equal to x plus 1 and x squared plus y squared equal to 13. Now, if you notice, this is going to be, if we follow up that, this is going to be equation 1, and this will be equation what? Equation 2. So we are asked to solve simultaneously. This is a question under one linear, one quadratic, where this is the linear equation and this is the quadratic equation. So we are going to look at these various steps. We're going to look at these various 6 steps as we solve this question. So see how we are going to solve this question step by step using these various steps. So before we take the first step, we are going to analyze first. We are going to see that in the equation 1, the linear equation, y is equal to x plus what? 1. Also, we already have a value for what? For y. So all we need to do is to substitute this value for y, which is x plus 1, into the second equation, which is a what? A quadratic equation. So let's do that right now. So we have x squared plus what? We'll substitute that, we are going to have x plus 1 square. That will be equal to what? 13. Now, if we have that, the next step says we should expand the bracket and simplify. So that will give us what? X squared plus bracket. This will give us x plus 1 because that is a square bracket. The bracket is squared, so that will give us this equal to what? Equal to 13. So if we simplify this, we are going to have x squared plus this x times x will give us x squared. X times 1 will give us what? Plus, that will give us plus x. That will give us plus x. Now, x times 1 will give us plus x, and 1 times 1 will give us plus 1. That will be equal to 13. Now, we'll have to simplify. X squared plus x squared will give us 2x squared. X plus x will give us plus what? Plus 2x, then plus 1 equal to what? 13. Now, if this 13 comes this way, it's going to give us a negative sign. So that will give us 2x squared plus what? 2x plus 1, then minus what? 13, and that will be equal to what? 0. So finally, we'll have a quadratic equation, which is 2x squared plus what? Plus 2x. Now, plus 1 minus 13. We have plus 1, we have minus 13. Minus 13 is greater than 1. So the negative sign, which is the greatest, will be the power that is leading. So 13 minus 1 will give us what? 12. And this will be equal to what? 0. Now, do you notice now that we have gotten the quadratic equation. So step 3 says we should what? We should factorize the quadratic what? Equation. So before we do that, let's clear this and then see how we'll follow, we'll conclude step 3. I guess you must have understand what we did in this other step. Now let's clear this off and then follow up step 3. So step 3 will require us to factorize the quadratic equation. Now let's factorize the quadratic equation. We are going to factorize the quadratic equation. Now there are two steps. There are 3 ways of factorizing quadratic equation, but the most easiest method is through factorization, and the other one is through the completing of a square method, while another method is the use of the quadratic formula. But in this part, we are going to look at solving this quadratic equation using the factorization method. Now, when we talk about the factorization method, what do we need? What do we need to do? We have to look for 2 factors that we can multiply together, that will give us what? 20 what? 24. And the question is, how did we get this 24? 2 times 12 will give us what? 24. Now, assume there was no number here, then it will be what? It will just be what? 12. What the number will multiply that will give us 12, and when we add them, they are going to give us, that will give us minus 24. The sign is included, and when we add them, we are going to get minus plus what? Plus 2. Now take note of that, it's very important. Now if we do that, we are going to get 2 numbers. What are the 2 numbers? Let's assume this will be the numbers that will stand for 2x, and this is the number that will stand for what? For x. Now, what 2 numbers can we multiply together to give us 24? We'll have number 6 and what? 6 and 4 will give us 24, because 6 times 4 will give us 24. So if we put a negative sign, if we put a positive sign here and a negative sign here, plus 6 times minus 4 will give us what? Will give us minus 24. Now, plus 6 plus minus 4. Plus 6 plus minus 4 will give us what? Will give us plus what? Plus 2. Why? Because the 6 will subtract 4 to give us what? To give us plus what? Plus 2. So you see that we can really do that, and the 2 values we are going to get is plus 6 and what? And minus what? And minus 4. So this aside, let's now go straight into solving the quadratic equation using the factorization method. Now, to solve this using the factorization method, we've gotten the 2 factors, and the 2 factors are plus 6 and minus what? Plus 6 and minus 4. So we'll have our 2x squared plus 6x minus plus 6x minus 4x, right? Minus 12. That will be equal to what? 0. So if we simplify this and this, What is common among them is what? Is 2x. So we'll bring the 2x out. Here we'll have x remaining plus what? Plus 3, right? Good. Why this and this, the common factor is what? Is 4. So that will give us what? Minus what? Minus 4 into bracket x plus what? Plus 3. Because minus 4 times plus 3 will give you minus what? 12. And that will be equal to what? 0. So when we simplify this, we can see that this is common. So we'll bring out the common term. That will be what? X plus what? Plus 3 into bracket what? 2x minus what? 4. That is this term and what? And this term. So you see, we've gotten two factors, and that will be equal to 0. So our x plus 3 will be equal to 0, and our 2x minus 4 will be equal to 0. So if we simplify further, we are going to see that our x will be equal to plus 3 goes this way, that will be minus what? 3. And our x, 2x here will be equal to what? 4. So the values for x now, we see that x is equal to minus 3 and x will be equal to what? 4 divided by what? By 2. So our x, values for x will be equal to minus 3 and what? And 2. Very good. So now we've gotten two values for what? For x. Now, if you check this very well, you're going to find out that we have worked out values for x. So we are in step 4. We are going to look for how we'll go about step 5. Step 5 says you should find out the values of y by substituting both values of x into one of the original equations. So we're going to clean the board now and then see how we can apply that to that equation. Now, as you are substituting this value for x into any of the two equations, you notice now that our main aim there is to also look for two values for what? For y that will correspond to these values of what? To these values of x. So take note now that we have gotten two values for x, and now we need to have two values for what? Two values for y. Now let's solve further. Now, if we solve further, we are going to get two values for x2. Now let's find the two values for y. Now, to get two values for y, all we need to do is to simplify, substitute this value into any of the two equations. We are going to take the first equation. And we remember the first equation is what? The first equation is y equal to what? X plus what? Plus 1, right? Now let's substitute this value. If x is equal to minus 3, let's substitute it into the equation. We're going to have our y to be equal to minus 3 plus what? 1. And in that regard, our y will be equal to minus what? 2. So you see, when x is equal to minus 3, y is equal to minus 2. Now, when x is equal to 2, what will the value of y be? Our y will be equal to what? Our x is what? 2 plus what? 1. So our y will be equal to what? 3. So you see, when x is equal to 2, our y will be equal to what? 3. So we've gotten two values for x and two values for what? For y. Now, this is the point you must note, because this is the solution to this question. We have solved them simultaneously, and we've been able to come to realize now that we have gotten two values for x and two values for what? For y. Now, if you want to check, you can truly check if what you've done is correct by substituting this value into any of this equation. Now, let's take this result. This is the second result we've gotten. Now, let's put this result into the first equation. Remember, the first equation will have y to be equal to what? X plus 1. Now, if we take this part, our y is equal to minus 2, right? That will be equal to x is what? Minus 3. So that will give you minus 3 plus what? Plus 1. Now, do you notice that minus 3 plus 1 will give us minus 2? That means this result is what? Is correct. Now, if we use it for the other part, let's use this. We have y equal to x plus 1. Now, let's put value for x to be equal to 3, just as with y to be equal to 3, and the value of x is equal to 2. So 2 plus 1 will give us what? Will definitely give us 3. So you see that this value is also what? Is also correct, just like this is also correct. Now, if you also substitute this into the second equation, which is what? Which is x squared plus the quadratic equation y squared equal to 3, you find out that you are still going to get, if you substitute this value 2 as x here and 3 as y here, you're going to get 3 as your result finally. So all this shows that these results are what? These results are correct. So these are the two values for x and the two values for what? For y. I guess you did follow. So when you are given any question like this is how you go about solving a question with one linear, one quadratic equation. Now let's look at question number 2. Now let's consider question number 2. In question number 2, we are going to look at the question 2x plus 3y equal to 5 and 2y squared plus xy equal to 12. We are asked to solve these equations simultaneously. Now, just as we did in the first, we are going to look at the steps required. Now, the first step in this second question is to rearrange the first equation. Remember, the first question, we have our y to be equal to x plus 1, but this time around, we have 2x plus 3y to be equal to 5. So we need to rearrange the equation. So to rearrange the equation, we have to make x the subject of what? We have to make x the subject of formula. Now to make x the subject of formula, we are going to have 2x to be equal to what? 5 minus what? Minus 3y. So if we divide both sides by 2, we are going to have our x to be equal to 5 minus 3y divided by what? 2. Now we've gotten this as the value of what? As the value of what? Of x. Now the next question says you should what? You should substitute that value 5 minus 3y over 2 for x into the second equation. Now let's look at step 2. Now the second equation, we have the second equation as what? 2y squared plus xy equal to what? 12. So wherever we see x in this second equation, we are going to what? We are going to replace it with 5 minus 3y over what? Over 2. So we have 2y squared plus x, which is what? Plus x, which is uh what? Y into bracket what? 5 minus 3y over 2, all close brackets, and that will be equal to what? Equal to 12. Now we are going to simplify this equation, expand the bracket and simplify. So we are going to have 2y squared plus, we are going to expand this expression, we need to multiply, multiply y with everything in the bracket. So that will give us what? 5y. That will give us y times 5y minus what? 3y square all over what? All over 2, right? Good. Equal to what? 12. Now, for us to clear this fraction denominator, we need to multiply through by 2. Now, if you multiply all the parts, this, and this by 2, we are going to clear these two. So we are going to have 2 times what? 2y squared plus 5 minus 5y minus 3y squared all over 2 multiplied by 2, and that will be equal to what? 12 times what? 12 times 2. Now, if we do that, we are going to have, our what? 4y squared, right? Plus 2, we cut 2, that will give us what? 5y minus 3y squared equal to what? 20 what? 4, because 12 times 2 will give us what? 24. So we simplify further, that will give us 4y squared minus what? 3y squared plus 5y equal to what? 20 what? 24. So this will give us y squared plus what? 5y. When 24 comes this way plus 24, it becomes minus 24, and that will be equal to what? 0. So this is the what? This is the quadratic what? This is the quadratic equation. Now, having gotten this quadratic equation, the next thing we need to do is to what? The next thing we need to do, remember the question here says we should what? The next step is to factorize the quadratic equation. That is step 4. So we are going to consider step 4, and the is in factorizing the quadratic equation, we are going to get values for y. Now, remember the last time I told you that we need to factorize this, use the factorization method. We have 3 methods, but the most simplest method is the factorization method. So we are looking for 2 values for y. We have y here and we'll have another y here. The next thing we have to do is to look for 2 values we can multiply that will give us minus 24. Take note of this. And when we add them, they will give us what? Plus 5. What are the 2 values? When you multiply, it gives you minus 24, and when you add, it gives you plus 5. What are these 2 values? We have 8 and what? 3. 8 times 3 will give us what? 24. Now, in what part can we put the negative? This will be plus 5 plus 8, right? And this will be minus what? Minus 3. Now, plus 8 times minus 3 will give us minus 24. And plus 8 plus minus 3 will give us plus what? 5. So that means the 2 values is plus 8 and minus what? 3. So we'll have to put them into the equation. So we'll have y squared plus, that will give us y squared plus 8y minus 3y minus 24, that will be equal to what? 0. So we'll simplify. This and this, the common variable is what? Y. So that will give us y plus what? Plus 8, right? And this will be what? This and this common variable is what? Is 3, because 24 divided by 3 can be possible, and this will give us y plus what? 24 divided by 3 will give us what? 8, and this will be equal to what? 0. So if we simplify, we have one common term, which is y plus what? Plus 8. We bring them out, and this other part will have y minus what? Minus 3, and both of them will be equal to what? 0. Now, if we simplify further, we are going to get, if we simplify further, uh, we are going to get our y plus 8 to be equal to 0, and what? Y minus 3 to be equal to what? 0. So our y here will be equal to minus 8, and our y here will be equal to what? 3. So you see, we've gotten two values for what? We've gotten two values for y. Now let's go back to step 4. Step 6. We have worked out the values for what? For y. The next thing we want to do now is to find the values for what? To find the values for x. And to find the values of x, we have to substitute any of these into any of these two equations. These two equations, we need to substitute any of these into these two equations. So we are going to take the first equation, the linear equation, because it's going to be much what? Easier to deal with, to tackle. So let's take that equation. If we take that equation, linear equation, we are going to have the linear equation is what? 2x plus 3y equal to what? 5. So when y is equal to minus 8, we are going to put that value into this. So we'll have our 2x plus 3 into bracket 8, and that will be equal to what? Into bracket minus 8, that will be equal to what? 5. So if we simplify this, we'll have our 2x minus plus 3 times minus 8, that will give us minus 24, right? Let's clean that so that you will not get confused. So that will give us what? That will give us minus 24, and this will be equal to what? 5, right? So our 2x will be equal to 5. 24 comes this way to give us what? Plus what? 24. Now, if we simplify that further, we're going to have what? We're going to have our we are going to have 2x to be equal to 29, and our x will be equal to 29 divided by 2, which will be equal to what? That will be equal to 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 9 divided by 2 is 4. Remainder what? Remainder 5. That will give you 14 point what? 0.5. So when y is equal to minus 8, x is what? 14.5. Now let's look at a situation where we'll have y to be equal to what? 3. When y is equal to 3, then our x will be what? 2x plus what? 3 into bracket 3, right? That will be equal to 5. So we'll have our 2x plus 9 equal to what? 5. So our 2x will be equal to 9 goes that way to be 5 minus what? Minus 9, right? And this will give us 2x to be equal to what? This minus this will give us minus 4, because 5 minus 9 is going to give us minus 4. So our x here will be equal to minus 4 divided by 2, and that will be equal to minus 2. So you see, when y is equal to 3, x is equal to what? Minus what? Minus 2. Now let's go back to step 7. Step 7 says you should substitute both pairs of values of x and y into both equations to check if your answers are what? If your answers are correct. We are going to do that to check if our answers are correct. Now, what do we have? the first equation, we have our what? We are just going to use one equation, 2x plus 3y. Is it going to give us 5? Let's find out. Now, we have the first value. Remember the first value, we have y equal to 3 and x equal to what? Minus what? Minus, minus 2. So we'll use our, we're going to use y equal to 3 and what? And x equal to minus 2. We'll insert them into this equation to find out if they will give us 5. So we'll have our 2 into bracket minus 2 as the value of x plus what? Plus 3 into bracket 3, right, as value of x. So when we simplify this times this will give us minus 4 plus this times this, 3 times 3 will give us 9. So when you add this equation, what will it give us? Minus 4 plus 9, that will give us what? 5. So you see, these two values are what? Are correct. So that really shows us that what? That we get the correct what? And options are what? Options are correct. So you see, the answers are very, very what? The answers are correct. So this is how you go about solving question on what? Simultaneous equation, one linear what? One quadratic. I know you understand all what we did, and if you don't understand them, I want you to go back to this step-by-step method we followed and get your answers. So the answers to this question is y equal to what? Y equal to minus 8 and y equal to minus 3, y x is equal to 14.5 and x is equal to minus what? 2. So this is the solution to these questions. We're taking the first sample question and the second sample question. With these two sample questions, I guess you should be able to solve any question involving simultaneous equation, one linear, one quadratic. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, I want you to hit the subscribe button, as subsequently we'll be bringing our next topic, which is going to be matrices and determinant. Don't miss that topic. Subscribe to this channel so that you can get notified when that video is published. Thanks so much for watching and look forward to seeing you watch our subsequent videos.